Hi there, ladies and gents. It's Dan from Adventure More UK. Welcome to another episode of my podcast, Catch You on the Flip Side. Today's special guest is an author. He's also a former Danish army officer, and he's also a good friend of mine. It's Mr. Eskil Berger. How are you going, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's been quite a while since we saw each other. The last that must have been that would have been 2010, right?
2010
I
is
believe.
when we physically first met.
Yeah,
For people that don't know,
yeah.
obviously we tried doing a podcast on. It was you would have been my first ever guest on my podcast back around Christmas last year, and I was obviously quite new to it, and it's your first kind of thing doing it, and obviously we had a few technical difficulties, so we've had to redo it, but it's all good. We got there in the end. So yeah, but
Absolutely.
yeah, last time we physically met was 2010 in Afghanistan. Now we'll go into that a little bit afterwards because obviously we got loads. We can talk about lots of things, and first thing I want to talk about is your upbringing. Like, what did you do as a child, and how was it growing up in sort of not a split household, but obviously from two sort of different nationalities I know of. What was it like that?
Yeah. So I'm Danish.
Yeah.
Just to specify that I'm a Danish upbringing. My father's Danish and my mother is Peruvian. And and not from any big city, Peru. She's from the highlands, the mountains up in the Andes, where these indigenous people live and grow the land there, mostly in newer times cattle, older times potatoes, lots of that, and there were like valleys where water could run, and that would also create opportunities for farming, etc. So my father is a Danish Viking, and my mother is a Peruvian Inca princess, and I found myself growing up in Denmark because my mom went to Denmark to work at the embassy and met my father there back in the 70s, where not a lot of people knew how to speak Spanish, and my father studied that at university, and two boys came from that, me and my older brother. Um, and in the 70s in Denmark, there was a big need for labor, and that labor, I guess all Europe, there's a need for labor in those industrialized upcoming countries, and in Denmark we got a lot of foreign workers up from Turkey, from Pakistan, from Yugoslavia. They were also mixed in with the refugees from the old Yugoslavia, Serbia, Albania, Bosnians. So a large demographic group was, well, not that large, but we were a lot. We were different, right? There were like different cultures coming in, different religions, and and different from the old Danish way of being and thinking and acting, and of course also the Latin American culture would be different from the Danish. I think everything is different from the Danish. Really, it's a very small country, very set in its ways, and it still is, even though it is a multinational population now. It's still very set in its ways. And back then in the 70s when I grew up, there for the people who had a very low income, like we did, we were, considered poor. There was an area like a ghetto, you would call it today, a big concrete jungle of newly erected buildings with smaller and larger apartments in them, where we would afford to live. And I grew up in one of those areas, together with my brother and my mother. My father would already at that point have been kicked out by this very conservative and very strong Peruvian woman who couldn't really see his way of living as being how she wanted to raise her kids. So he, even though we had a close relationship to him all through my upbringing, he was relatively quickly out of the question and the picture, and that left my mother working 24 hours a day in order to feed her children and pay the rent, which meant that we were not necessarily left to our own devices, but very much having to find a way of finding friends and not staying out of trouble and all that, right? And you know that, Dan, as youngsters, if you don't have guidance and if you don't have direction, sometimes someone to help you understand to say no, then you very easily can get out into trouble. And my brother and I were sort of like balancing between the immigrant gangs that ruled the area. At some point before that, the racist, we call them green jackets. They were all white Danish criminal-minded people wearing these green bomber jackets that you did in the 80s there, and they ruled that area for some point, and then the immigrant gangs took over, and then biker gangs were there as well. So it was like a very unruly neighborhood to grow up in, and my brother and I, being not Muslims, not fully Danish, Catholic Latin upbringing, we were sort of the odd ones. We couldn't really follow the Muslim thinking boys and girls there, and we could not either follow the Danish racist whatever, because we were not, we were brown, right? We were mixed. So it was all a question of navigating that, and that led to a lot of clashes, a lot of either running from a beating or actually being the one kicking some butt whenever we could, my brother and I. Right? So it was like, no, well, I had Socks, the dog now destroyed the. Just so you know, that's what's going on in the background. Yeah, he likes Socks, and if I'm not quick, then he gets his teeth in them, and there's no getting it from him. So if you hear some noises in the background, it's my socks getting demolished. So that was really more or less, growing up in a hard neighborhood, navigating that, and what helped me in sort of staying on the straight path was my martial arts training, sparking from the Karate Kid, actually.
Yeah.
the Karate Kid, Daniel DiMaggio, or what's his called, who get bullied in school by the LaRusso, yeah, exactly, by the big boys, and I sort of like could identify and found myself in that situation. So I started to this was a new thing back in Denmark called Taekwondo, and we thought it like being a mix of better than karate and judo and all the other martial arts. They were the and the most violent one as well, because you were actually allowed to kick people in the head and all that. So my plan back then was to become a black belt, and then nobody would mess with me, right? And that's really what happened, right? I found a lot of discipline, stayed out of trouble, went to training every day, never really got exposed to the criminal element that was all over that area because of my training, right? So it's that sort of led me to get on an elite program when I had to go on to high school, where I because of my taekwondo and the program that I was in, winning national championships and Scandinavian championship, international competitions and all that, actually gave me the possibility of getting some support from the state, and that also dragged me into another environment with other very serious minded athletes, and all of that led to, at some point, the army, at the age of I think I must have been 20.
Yeah.
And that's the childhood, really.
Yeah.
In few words.
Yeah. Well, I obviously we've talked about this before, but I didn't realize, is it when you joined up, and I think it's still the case, that joining the military in Denmark it's part of, it's conscription. You have conscription still in Denmark.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So all young men at the age of 18 need to go to conscription, right? So we are all called to they call it the day of the army or the day of the defense, and you come in and you go through some tests, and then at the end of this what would you call the process, you actually physically draw a number, and if the number is sufficiently high, then you're free to choose, right? You can join, or you can not join, whatever you want, right? So at that point in mid 90s when I joined, the conscription was very much so. It was a minimum of 12 months conscription. Today it's 4 months conscription, right? So it's
Okay.
we had four times as long, 3 times as long conscription period. I chose to join an officers program that was 2 years, so that I could faster get to a point where I didn't have to be yelled at that much. Actually, I think that was one of my motivations back then, that I didn't need a sergeant yelling at me, because what the fuck, right? Would I accept that, right? So that was a motivation I had with that. It's strange that someone with so little authoritative motivation actually chooses to join a system that actually deals with authority, like not as much as the British does, of course. The Danish system, is very different from where you come from, right? But
very different.
Yeah, we had conscript.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Before I get on to sort of when we met in Afghan, obviously you did tours of Kosovo and Iraq, didn't you? Was it Kosovo first you did?
Yeah. I went to Kosovo as a platoon commander in 2001.
Okay.
We at that point the Americans had the coalition, NATO, had established an ethnic division down through Kosovo, dividing Serbs up towards the border towards Serbia, and Albanians, who were the great majority living in Kosovo, and who had been the most affected by the Serb rule, right? And that's really what the war was about, to push the Serbs back into Serbia, and convert Kosovo into Kosovo, which then would be an Albanian, predominantly Muslim ruled area, right? And there was a lot of clashes there. When I went there, we went there with a brand new infantry. Armored infantry carrier and APC. You saw them in Afghanistan. We called them the Piranhas.
Yeah.
Back then it was like the model 1 or something like that, like the first one of them. And I remember that we the Danish army bought 22 of them, and the Americans bought like 2,200 or 22,000, I don't know, for their striker force, and that sort of made our vehicles very, very exclusive, and because we almost were American, right? That we thought that was really the cool thing to be, and also because you couldn't get spare parts because the Americans were just like paying more, right? So it was very interesting to go there. That was my first command as an infantry leader, and that was the shit, right? That was a war, right? Wow, we were in a war zone. It's we could risk all kinds of. We were carrying weapons, different from many of the UN days, the UN teams, where they actually went there without weapons at all. We had another mandate, and that felt like a really sharp mission back then. And would we be a lot wiser several years later, right? But back then there was no Iraq, and there was no well, not that we knew of, right? Like and no Afghanistan, and all the things hadn't developed.
So did you go to Kosovo pre 9/11? So before 9/11?
9/11 was 2001, right?
Yeah.
11th of September 2001. Yeah. I was home when 9/11 happened. Yes.
Yeah. So did it change at all? Obviously, I know Kosovo was not part. Obviously, it wouldn't have been anything to do with 9/11, but like when it came towards like obviously the terror threat and stuff like that, did it make a difference? Do you know, like from like post and pre 9/11?
I think the whole world changed that day. We were all of a sudden exposed to a massive attack on something that we always would have thought being not even not even during the Second World War was the states they weren't hit, right, like England was, or Denmark or Europe for the matter. So someone attacking the United States like that, with all the security and with all the might and all the military they had, sort of threw all of us out into a state of now what's going to happen, right? I remember I saw that on TV the day it happened, and I didn't believe, okay, now we're going to war, we're going to. I had no idea what was going to happen from that, and terrorism was at that point really something that we mostly connected to Northern Ireland, right? The bombs and what you were fighting against right there. So I think that we knew of terrorism, we knew of bombs, and we knew of and we have sort of been brought up with that. I don't think the Americans really had an idea of what terrorism really was, and I remember that IRA actually very quickly after that happened, dissolved themselves, right? They disbanded, they ceased to exist, and then there were some political parties or something like that, just because the world had changed. They wouldn't want to be in the same category as what happened over in the United States, right? And then everything else happened.
Yeah, so that's obviously for many people that I've spoke to about Kosovo, because I missed out on Kosovo and Bosnia. I didn't get to go. I think it just started. I think they were starting to bring people back from there when I joined up. So I joined up in 2004, back end of 2004. So I think they'd already started bringing back, if not most people, back from Kosovo and Bosnia. So from what I gather, it was a completely different scenario from Kosovo and Bosnia to Iraq. Now, obviously, from your point of view, what was it like going from Kosovo to Iraq in your role?
Yeah, I remember. I went to Iraq as an intelligence officer in charge of supporting the Danish infantry company, and we were there under British a British brigade. It was a battle group as a part of a British brigade there. Desert Rats, I think they were called that.
7th Brigade.
7th Brigade, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And when we were in Kosovo, we were under a French brigade there, and that was very, very different from getting all of a sudden to work with Brits. It was a whole other world. It was all of a sudden super spot on. You could. I think I felt that working with Brits, you could just feel that these guys have been at war forever. Forever. You never stopped, right? There was so much experience. It was such a relaxed atmosphere around it. no panic. Things got in Denmark. We have to spend at least 3 weeks planning a mission or an operation. Let's just
Yeah.
say that involves the battle group. The British Brigade would finish the staff work and all the preparations and be ready to roll out in a couple of days. You know, doing the same thing. And we would all see that as, oh, that's ridiculous. Nobody can prepare themselves to go and do anything, you know, in a relatively safe way, because we always thought zero casualties, right? I believe Brits, you see it differently. Obviously, nobody wants anyone to die, but you still have some experience concerning these things, right? And that gave me like an idea of how professional soldiers and a professional military operation and unit really works, and I think that was impressive. I like that a lot. There were so many things with the British, especially their officers, that I didn't like. That I disliked actually, where the difference between grunt private soldier, the non-commissioned officers, and the officers, the silos they were put in. I disliked that a lot. I couldn't. I wouldn't be able to function in that system. But I was very impressed. And when I was in Iraq, Afghanistan was ongoing at that point, and we would look at the statistics. Today there were like 16 suicide vehicle bombers in Baghdad, and in Afghanistan they would report of one IED somewhere, you know, wherever in that whole country. And we're like, yeah, wow. Afghanistan, yeah, that's you know, nothing is going on in Afghanistan compared to Iraq, right? So we were definitely the right place. The thing with Iraq, other than it being such a hostile environment, both geographically and especially with the heat, right? It was so hot all the time. Those burning oil fields there you can see all the time, and everything was just so hot. It was crazy. But also it was a whole other culture, the Arab, the sort of Arab culture, they didn't want us to be there, and you never knew who you were talking to. Authorities would possibly not be anyone who wanted us to succeed in their area. There was someone who were lying directly up in your face or holding you there, so somebody could prepare an ambush and all that. So it was a constant threat against your life when you were in Iraq, and also when you were driving. You know, we got really good at finding these IEDs that were so creatively placed and done, the explosive form projectile that would go through a tank. You know, there were no armor that could protect you against that. So every time we drove out, it was like the death lottery. So who will get their legs blown off just sitting in the vehicle, or they would just tilt it up so they knew exactly that it would blow off the head of the gunner or something like that, right? Or you know, Iraq was just a constant soup of stress, if you ask me. Kosovo was still like a switching on and off. Like we had riots, then we went out and we prepared. We had some closer action and some closer contact to the rioters, and you know, getting big rocks thrown at you and Molotov cocktails and all that, trying not to get burned alive. That was something else than getting blown up, right? And nobody was really shooting at us in Kosovo. They would do so in Iraq, right? So yeah, and the IEDs. So that was a big difference, definitely. Yep.
Yeah. So I know when I was so when I was in Iraq, like I was based in what's called the Cobb in Basra. The most sort of the threat that we encountered quite a lot was the IDFs, the indirect fires and mortars, stuff like that coming into camp. Now, that's something that I found more common than IEDs in Iraq. Now, obviously, we did different roles. I worked with what's called JHC, which is a Joint Helicopter Command. Yeah, so I worked with them in Basra, but we used to do the comms, the communications for the helicopters out towards places like Basra Palace, out towards is it Sharba Log Base. I used to do that quite a lot. So I think our roles would have been quite different from what we did. But as I've mentioned before when we spoke last time, I worked alongside the Americans and also the Danish Air Force. So it's something that kind of I've already got an insight to how the Americans work and how the Danish work. And then obviously we skip forward, I think it was 3 years for me, 2010, which is when I got attached to your company, which is what I want to talk about mostly, because like that's something that is, for me, it's going to sound strange, but for people won't realize, like meeting you guys, like yourself and the rest of the team, is like, it's like absolutely been one of the best things that's happened in the last 10 plus years for me. Like I met some amazing people. Like you guys treated me like no other, and obviously the man in charge of that whole company was yourself, and that's something I think you mentioned earlier about I you know, obviously being British, I've obviously worked with other British regiments and other battalions and stuff, and you said earlier about like the Danish and British officers are completely different, like kettle of fish. Like as most people would people look at British officers and they look at like clean shaven, you know, flopped over hair, obviously no tattoos, like hello, yes, no, nice to meet you, my name, yeah, exactly. And then I remember meeting you for the first time with your beard and your hair, obviously you're covered in tattoos, and I was like, man, this dude looks like such a hard sort of badass Viking, and I was like, I'm glad I'm on his team. And yeah, and that's when we met, and we obviously met on the patrol baseline, which I spent all my tour with yourselves. Now, for people who don't know what I say we did as a company, because I was a part of your company, I'd like to think. What was your kind of role over there, and how did your role differ or change from being in Iraq?
Well, from supporting the company in Iraq with intelligence doing target packs and cooperating with the British um, brigade there, I had my own command again, like I had in Kosovo, right? So I was in charge of 139 Danish soldiers, and all of you guys who were either directly in support with the communications. They were also engineers. Remember, we had we had Gurkhas as well. We had some U.S. Marine Corps Earth Raider something crazy thing there, and there were some heavy artillery as well, observer at some point that was a part of the company. So we were approximately 250 at the maximum height of we were 300 in the four sort of camps that were spread over the patrol baseline. So yeah, I was a commander, right? A company commander. I had the responsibility of soldiers directly. My decisions, my analysis, my orders, they would affect someone directly and possibly lead to, and possibly, yeah, because we knew that we were not getting out of there 100% alive, even though that was my goal, right? My goal was when I promised the parents of the boys and girls that I left from Denmark with, because they were very young, as you probably remember. They were beginning of 20s, mid 20s, and there were some older ones, but they were all very young. So prior to leaving Denmark, one of my promises was that I would not make any decisions or issue any orders that I would not personally go in front of and do myself, right? So that was the philosophy of it. Do right, be good, be professional, get things done, and protect people, and protect the soldiers all the way through, right? And hopefully get back 100% without any casualties. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, right? But we were not supposed to go to Afghanistan, with that company. We were actually supposed to go back, and I say back because we were two professional companies. One a very experienced one, with they called Bravo company. They were placed in the big camp, the Danish camp, together with the Brits, and then there was Charlie company. Alpha company was the tanks, right? Yeah, I think they were the tankers, and then there was Delta. That was the British company in that other place that close by, and Echo, or Enormous as they called themselves. That was an American infantry company, right? Yeah. Typical American, right? Enormous they called themselves. Yeah. Well. So we shouldn't even have been to Afghanistan. That was a change of plans that the Danish government made at the last minute, so to say. It should have been another company from another regiment, the Hussars, the mounted regiment. They should have been the ones sending a company together with the Royal Guards. But at the last minute, that was changed. We should have been to Kosovo. C-COY, and that made sense because we were so young. We had no experience. I had been in Iraq as an intelligence officer in Kosovo, right? As a platoon commander. So we didn't have any experience, and all my platoon commanders, they had never been deployed before, right? Some of the 2ICs had, and my 2IC had been deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan before. So we were very few that had been actually in theater before. So it made sense to start up with this company in Kosovo, right? Which was, I think I was on team 4 back then, and I think we were rotating down as team, 204 or something.
Yeah.
Like a lot of years had gone by, but when it was changed from the Army operational command side, very few of the integrants of the soldiers of the company actually chose not to come. We had already at that point built a esprit de corps, like a really core spirit of who we were. We were those guys with the eagle, right? The eagle tattoo there. We were these guys. We were special. We were good. We were well trained. We have shown that through our tests and our training, that we were really good at what we had been trained to do. So people chose to actually come to Afghanistan and stay in their platoons, right? And then of course the unfortunate accident that happened 4 weeks before we rotated down to Afghanistan. The two guys we lost in a live fire. The last live fire exercise we had a misfire in a mortar tube, and that killed two of the guys in that section. And in spite of that, in spite of the Army Operational Command trying to sort of cut that section out and find someone new that they could pay a little bit extra to stay or whatever, they all decided that no, they were going to Afghanistan in order to honor their fallen comrades, right? So we had a very very strong team when we rotated down, and I think then that's also what you what you saw, what you felt when you were a part of the company, right? That it was the suck, right? We were all in the suck together, and
Yep.
we had to embrace it, right? And you were absolutely one of the professionals that helped a very young company in doing right when it came to comms, and when it came to, because you were involved in so many incidents where we had to very quickly try to get support or get medevacs and all that, right? So it's sort of like the heart of the operation was when the guys were out there in in the area of operation, doing their things. You guys were our life-saving communication to Big Brother in the camps, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was it's definitely something I remember. I remember quite a lot. But the one incident I remember, and I can't remember if this was on the team before or it was our team. You know, obviously because we spent a couple of months, about a month or so before you guys came, so we kind of changed over into Crazy Coy. But I can't remember if you remember the incident where I think it was at the same place that we were at, and there was a sandstorm came in, and the obviously Taliban came, insurgents came in, up to the camp and chucked grenades over and RPGs. And at the time, I think there was only 33 people on camp. And I think there was like 16, 17 casualties. And two of them being two of our signallers, two of the British signallers, which was basically both of them. Like when I was with you, there was me and one other. So that I remember that because that was at the time was one of the biggest mass casualty like ISAF situations had in that part of Helmand. And yeah, I remember that because I was in patrol base Zumbale. I think it was called Zumbale, or it changed its name, which was just down the road from where we were. So I moved up to where you are, where you were. And I remember that because I remember I was sat just doing my thing. I was with the Brits at the time, further up the road. I think you were saying the Gurkhas. I was up the road, and I just remember hearing a load of gunfire, and I was just like, it's a bit too late to be having a patrol at that time of night, because it was probably 11 o'clock at night, maybe later. And I think I'd just come off the phone because we used to have a satellite phone, so I'd come off the phone to my family after ringing them. And I remember, I think it was my mum was saying, "Oh, are you okay?" And I was like, yeah. Because we used to have firefights all the time. It became normal. That was the norm. And I was like, yeah, no, it'd be fine. It's just, you know, there's guys out on the ground. Obviously, I wasn't on duty then. And then it just kept going and going and going. And I thought, this isn't right. There's something not right about this. So I ended up trying to radio through to where they were at the same place we moved to eventually. And we couldn't get hold of anyone. We couldn't get hold of the Danish signaller. We couldn't get hold of our signallers, the British guys. And then obviously, long story short, we found out that this had happened where they'd come over during a sandstorm and thrown grenades and stuff over the fence or over the HESCO walls. And I remember going down, I think a few days later, obviously we had to go down and rescue all the kit and equipment because it had all been obviously damaged and stuff like that. And I remember because I got told eventually I got told that one of our lads, they'd been playing poker or playing cards before they'd gone to bed. So when I got there and there was like cards all over the place with like blood on it and stuff like that, I was like, man, this is like surreal. This is like, people like watch films and stuff like that and think, yeah, that's pretty realistic, but you'll never experience something like that until you've actually experienced it for real. And that's something, you know, things that will come into my will always stay there. And it's the same for, and again, I think this was team. So you guys were team, was it team 10 or team 9?
Team 10.
Yeah.
So the situation you just described was team 9, and team 9 was severely hit on incidents. Just before we came, that's probably what you wanted to talk about now. The patrol base line, the actual line, the road that the Gurkhas were actually constructing. That must be the best constructed road in the whole of Afghanistan. I've never seen so many layers and so much mesh and so much rubber and so much, I don't know, you know, it's so professionally made, that road. That actually on that it was just a dirt track, really, right, between the patrol bases down to the Helmand River, right, just cutting straight through the green zone, green because it was a lush zone, right, with lots of fields and vegetation and all that. The same day as we rotated in on Team 10, the Team 9 was hit in their brand new CV-90 machine gun armored infantry carriers, right? They were hit, and that mini tank, whatever we call it, was just blown top down, right? There were a few Danish soldiers died, and some British soldiers were badly wounded as well, right? And actually cut off the furthest patrol base all the way down. I can't remember what's it called right now, but you actually had a section down there living for a few days without any food and any water because we couldn't get to them, right? So it's Team 9 was really hard hit, both with that episode and the one I just talked about, right?
Yeah, because I remember, again, I think it was horrible, but I remember, and again, it must have been Team 9, where it was, I think for you guys, it was quite a pinnacle kind of, or I'm trying to think how to describe it, but so basically, long story short, I remember there was a girl called Sophia. I don't know if you remember that, where when she got killed on Team 9. And this is where you talk about how, you know, people think the Taliban are stupid. They're not stupid. They've been fighting wars for hundreds of years. And I remember I wasn't physically there at the time. I was in the patrol base further up the road, about 1 kilometre up the road. And obviously I got told about this. Yeah. Well, that was it. And obviously they'd been driving through, I think she was on top cover. And obviously normally they'd put IEDs in the road, obviously, but this time what they did is they put them in the wall. And what it did is, unfortunately, it went obviously straight across the top of the top cover in the vehicle and basically cut her in half. And yeah, that I remember one of our guys having to help out with the sort of after effects of that. And again, it's hard to explain, but it's not something that wouldn't want anyone to sort of experience. And again, it's something that people will never understand, because it's something you can't even just describe. And again, it reminds me of when I spent a couple of days on a mission with the Brits, and we were on top of the hill with the armored vehicles, the armored tanks, and we were providing top cover. It wasn't on the patrol baseline, but it was a bit further up the river, I think. And I think it was just a general sort of operation that they were doing. And I remember looking down on this patrol going across across the sort of tree line, and there was like a sand, like a mound of sand. Obviously, we saw these guys walking across, and then all of a sudden, all you can see is just smoke and sand and shit everywhere. And obviously, everyone knew straight away that someone had stood on an IED. And I remember, you know, like, again, long story short, we had to go and collect all the belongings after everything had been, you know, we called in the American Black Hawks. They came in, put him on the back of the Black Hawk. Unfortunately, he did pass away on the helicopter back to Bastion. So when we went to clear up after everything had settled down, it's just a weird feeling of knowing that, because obviously for myself, we had communications with the helicopters because that was part of my job. So I found out that he'd passed away as they were leaving, and obviously as they went. And I remember having to go down to the bottom of the valley next to the tree line and picking up basically the rest of him. And I remember picking up these boots and these backpack, seeing, you know, like marks going up the side of his backpack, obviously where the IEDs exploded in like a V shape. And I remember going off topic slightly, but I remember when I got home, and again, people won't be able to maybe be able to justify, like, maybe able to picture this in their heads. But I remember when I got home, I had to burn my trousers, and I had to get my mum to wash my boots because they were stained, obviously stained red with blood. And it's something that people I don't think will ever understand what that's like. And obviously people know what I'm like and know the stories I've told. And I don't think people will understand, like, them pictures in your head. Like, people watch films, like I said, and they play on video games, but to see that kind of thing in real life, I don't think people understand why or how, or even can compute in their heads what these images are like. And obviously people like myself suffer with PTSD. But again, I know we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but I thought it was in my brain, so I thought I'd tell it. So yeah.
And it's interesting, Dan, right? I thought about that too, because we all have been in a situation where we have been picking up pieces, right? Yeah, literally pieces of
Yep.
of human flesh and things like that. Nothing was left to any Taliban or any adversary to make propaganda with, right? So, and of course, out of respect of our fallen comrades. So, but one thing that comes back to me all the time is that I don't remember any blood.
Really?
I don't remember the color red in the desert. I don't remember. I remember dusts, and I remember flesh, and I remember, you know, little pieces of, I don't know whether it is flesh or fat or whatever, that like moist things, pieces of equipment and all that. But I don't remember blood. And what differs from what I think we see at the television and all that, and what we experienced was that I don't remember any screaming either, right? Even though people had been, you know, had a leg blown off or you're deadly wounded, all the screaming and all the thing that we sort of hear about, and it must have been another time, another war, mass casualties possibly, I don't know, but it was eerily quiet after the bang, right? So it's something that haunts me too, and that comes back, right? The dreams of these children, that children, my children, right? That my
Yeah.
guys, that
Yeah.
that got hurt, and some of them didn't survive, and that's a hard one, right? And call it what you want, PTSD. It's something that changed us from what we were before, and and something that made us what we are now, and what you are doing. And I wrote a book, right? So
Yeah.
you're doing this. We all telling our story. You also are doing the tattoo, like many other veterans are, painting the stories and the achievement on your skin, right?
Yeah.
For you to be able to communicate it when people ask, because they do, right? And then in time, when you have told your story so many times, it's it just becomes, and not that a goal should be easier, but it becomes less difficult, right? It's less difficult to live with it, and that's what happened to me over time. That I told my story so many times, I never hid it. I never tried to run away from it, because it was a proud and sad moment in life. And it was for your you were there 8 months or something. We were like there 7 months, and it's a very short period of time that has had such a large impact on our lives.
Yeah.
Considering that I'm 45 now, and I've had so many experiences, seen so many things, traveled so many places. The one period of time in my life that is the clearest to me, and the most blurry as well, is Afghanistan.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
And that's interesting. I remember more details about Afghanistan than my whole childhood. It's
Yeah.
interesting like that.
It's true. I'm pretty much the same. I remember quite a lot of what we did in Afghanistan, and I remember quite a bit of my childhood, obviously. But it's just, I think it's like you say, there's stuff that happens when we were out there, and it just sticks in your head. Obviously, there's, it's not all negative. There's some great things that happened while we're out there. Obviously, the obviously the sad thing at the moment is obviously we can't do anything because of COVID. But I know when the time's right, we'll be able to get together and meet up wherever it may be, if it'll be here or in Denmark, and have a get together. As we said, like, it's been 10 years now. Yeah, 10 years since, like, in March for me it'll be 10 years since I went to Afghanistan. Sorry, it'll be 11 years. Sorry, it'll be 11 years since I went to Afghanistan.
Yeah, 10 years for the rest of us, right? So we
Yeah.
rotated back February. Yeah, that's 10 years now.
It's
Actually,
crazy.
very
Yeah.
interesting. This is a 10 years anniversary talk we're having right now. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And we are planning on a get together then. So yeah, it has been put on hold. So any concrete physical planning of the get together, as we made a send off back then, where we invited the Brits as well, had them over for a weekend. We did some fun things, and hit, as we say in Denmark, a big hole in the ground with a lot of alcohol, and which tend to loosen up the environment a little bit. And we're going to do that again with all the ones we can get a hold of. I know that there's a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but I've heard of quite a few of our guys that are suffering with PTSD, and has also gone through an extensive regimen of help over the time, and quite understandable. And it's interesting because we're now, like, sort of returning to the childhood thing, right? I believe now, as a theory, as you get older, you always try to find wise theories about things, but I believe that I went to Afghanistan with quite a few other tools in my backpack than the very young boys and girls that came with me, that had grown up in other environments, and did not, and did get a cultural shock going from a very well developed democratic Denmark, Europe, to that place, right, where I had seen some cruel place before coming there, and I think that helped me a lot in also the coping of it afterwards. If you ask any psychiatrist or psychologist, they would probably have a checklist that is fully checked out on the PTSD scale. In my case, I'm just too stubborn to want to, and as a personal thing, to want to be categorized something, right? So I possibly, very possibly am a PTSD, just like so many others. But I just find, I think that a motivation, a strength for me is to not to fall into a category of an an ailment. I don't know what that name is, but and then keep on going, right? It's just one foot in front of the other, and feel bad sometimes, good days, bad days, but keep on moving, right? Just like the Yanks, they say, embrace the suck, right? And keep on moving.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. Now, you mentioned just before about like your book, like, so for people that don't know what the book's about, so it's obviously called Crazy Coy. It's spelled Crazy Coy, but it means crazy company. The only downside, and again, I spoke to you about this before. Is it in Danish and Spanish?
It's actually 80% translated into English now. Dan, I need to send you the raw copy so you can do some proofreading on it, please. I've paid a translator officer girl to translate it for me, but when I read it through, I can find quite a few things that sounds very much Danish, rather than what it should be. So if you want to, I would like to send you a raw copy of it so you could just read it through, because it's almost translated to English now.
Yeah. And as I say, like I definitely would do, because I know obviously everything that's in that book, I can completely relate to, because I was involved in that book. Obviously not personally, but I'm not mentioned in the book, but I am a part of that team, part of Crazy Company. And like I said, for people that don't know what the book's about, do you want to give us a quick, well, not even a quick, just an overview?
So it's 300 pages, and it's called Crazy Coy. Crazy Coy was the nickname we were given by I believe the staff officers in battalion, because they were constantly hearing us being, as you said, that was a common thing, being shot at, or engaging in some kind of troops in contact, or getting blown up or whatever, right? The information, or the information back to battalion sometimes didn't, and that's not your fault, then. It sometimes didn't get sent back as fast as it could. So they were quite a lot in the dark, and they and crazy things just happened in our area. We were exposed to several judge advocate general examinations, interrogations and investigations and all kinds of stuff, because there were so many things that we did in Crazy Coy, in patrol baseline, that was odd. It was different. We did things differently. We didn't accept status quo as being, so this is where we are, this is what we were given, this is what we have to live with. We changed things, we built all the time, we improved, we did crazy stuff. So yeah, I think the Crazy Coy name is pretty correct. I also heard that they called me Colonel Kurtz, because they could just imagine me sitting by a river, painted in the face, with a little indigenous boy by my side, and reciting I don't know, Shakespeare, because I was very much different from what ordinary officers were, and are to be found in Denmark. So the book is basically about our time in Afghanistan, some of the hardship we suffered, the time leading up to Afghanistan, and there are also a few chapters on my upbringing, my background, so they know the author, right? So and there's also a part of that, and then there's all the crazy stuff that happened in the time we were there, then, you know, and then there was a crazy time afterwards as well, where I personally was accused of having violated my duties as an officer, conduct an officer unbecoming an officer or something like that, and they actually wanted, with that trial they put me through, to put me in jail for 3 years, and it turned out to become one of the largest and most expensive court cases involving an infantry captain, Danish infantry captain ever, actually. So there's a little description of that too. I've heard, obviously, I think it's a pretty good book, but I heard that for people that has actually served, they will be able to recognize a lot of the issues and the problems and the frustration that is in that book, and you shouldn't. I hope I'm not describing it in the sense of it being a book describing frustration. It also describes mostly, and that's the most important thing, the guys that actually did the job in Afghanistan, and it's not me and listen to all my frustration. It's a remembrance piece of the guys that went there. You, your colleagues, me, officers, non-commissioned officers, everybody, the people, the guys that didn't come back, or the guys that actually died prior to deploying. That's the most important thing about that book, I think. So I'm looking forward to getting your opinion on it when it's translated fully.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'd definitely be happy to help. As I say, like I've become really good friends with you. We speak quite regularly. We speak on a weekly basis, through social media, through Facebook, etc. So yeah, I definitely, like, for everything that you guys have done for me, like by helping me and chatting, and there's a reason why that we've been still talking now, like 10 years later, 10, 11 years later. If I didn't want to speak to people, like, oh, you didn't treat me well, I would have just not speak to you. But obviously you treated me like no others, as I said at the beginning, and I've become, as I said in my intro, like, we've become good friends, and I think we always will be. So, and I would happily do that for you. So yeah, there's no issue about that. I won't worry. I'd definitely
We'll
give
put
that.
you in as executive proofreader, then you would actually be in the book too, Dan. Then
I try. Yeah. No, no, it's definitely something I'm really looking forward to, because I know you did mention you were getting it translated into English, which I was obviously really happy about, because obviously I'm not I could just speak a little bit of French, but Danish definitely, I knew a few words in Danish, but
nobody knows how to speak Danish, Dan. Don't worry about it. My mom has been there for how many years now? 60 years. She hardly speaks Danish still.
yeah.
So it's an incredibly difficult language.
Yeah, it is quite different. I know when I tried learning a few phrases, the only phrases I learned was obviously like radio terminology, like when I was on the radio, just so I could, because I know in like times of like, not panic, but times of like importance, obviously you guys would revert back to speaking Danish, but obviously I got to give it to you, like, generally most of the time you spoke English because I was around, so I knew what was happening, because realistically, end of the day, whatever you needed to be communicated, had to go through me to then go up to whoever, up to the headquarters.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
but that's something I did actually really appreciate. I still remember, you know, like that majority of the time, like 99% of the time, you all spoke English around me, which was good, unless obviously there was a bit of a panic. Like I said, as I say, not a panic, but something of quite importance. So, you know, we'd been involved in a firefight or whatever it may be. So, yeah, I understand that. I wanted to ask you about is it the Anders Laysen scholarship? I know. Like for me, I did a little bit of research into him, and I believe, was he someone who won the Victoria Cross during World War II? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, he did. Yeah, he was one of the founders of the SBS, right? So the Special Boat Service back in
Mm.
the day during the Second World War, and cooperated very closely with the British in the fight against the Nazis, the Third Reich, and he's considered a special operations dude, right? And he
Mm.
got the Victoria Cross for his achievements there, which is in itself like crazy, right?
Yeah.
Who gets the Victoria Cross, right?
Yeah.
But this guy, so they made a foundation in his name from the family, and they have a grant that they give um, extraordinary efforts within employment of the state, right? So if you're employed in the state, it could be as a doctor or a nurse or a firefighter or mostly special operations units, right? Who excel in doing something deployed or any other kind of actions. And I was honored to receive that commendation from the Anders Lassen Foundation, and it was an amount of money, of course, and a diploma of extraordinary leadership in a zone of combat, right? And it's really just getting the honor of receiving it. It's one thing, and but at that point, I was actually also indicted and almost going to jail from the JAC, accusing me of having done terrible things against my soldiers. So it was sort of like the politics of giving something like that was disregarded. If you are a good man doing right things as a soldier, you get this grant and you get the honor, disregarding whatever people accuse you of having done, because that is written in stone. That is what you did. That is proved, right? And
Yeah.
so in a very dark time, that was a little glimpse of light and hope and and restoring honor to a person who, like me, lives out of a code of honor and integrity and valor and pride, and not as a bad thing, but also of courage, right? So it's all those, all the I would say the old military values of a warrior or of a leader, that sort of was questioned. But when I got the grant, they were like, yeah, but disregard that. This is who you are, right? And that was great. That was the best part of receiving that that honor, really.
Yeah. It's something that I was going to ask you about, that where you were saying obviously at the same time you were going through this stage of where you potentially could have been sent to jail, but then on the opposite side you were given this award, which is obviously seen as a very positive thing. So I just thought, like, it seemed like a contradiction in terms, where one side of it is that you're a bad person and they're going to put you to jail, but then on the opposite side, they're giving you this award. Like, must have been quite confusing.
it's I choose to think of it that I did all the right things in all the wrong ways.
Okay.
It's it's it was this the JAG, the Army Operational Command, politics, all kinds of things that are unworthy of a warrior and a soldier, but is a part of the system that you as an officer need to be aware of and follow. Bad press can kill you as well. It killed my career really. I thought I saw myself as after Afghanistan, quickly getting up and becoming a major, and then a lieutenant colonel, and commanding my own battalion, right? Coming back to Afghanistan or something like that as a colonel of a battalion, right? That would have been kick ass. You know, that would have been oh really, really, really kick ass and great. And then I would have an influence other than merely a captain who had British soldiers in my company. I would possibly be able to influence, and that's what I saw, right? Influence and show that leadership of men in a crisis, a conflict zone, can actually be done differently from what you currently do in the British Army, and actually be successful, right? In people coming home with a feeling of integrity, right? And a feeling of being a part of a group, a team, an effort, no matter what the effort is, right? Then you only have each other in a little zone like that, right? You can only depend on the guy standing next to you, right? And we depended on you sending those messages to brigade, and if we didn't have you, just because of lost in translation, lack of abilities to speak English, and so many other things, we could have lost, vital moments, minutes, lives in the end, right? So that was my idea, and that was crushed with that court case. That ended there, and both because the Danish army is so small, there's not space for someone like me, and also because I didn't trust my superiors anymore. They weren't there for me when they needed to back me up in something like this, because no matter what, I did all the right things, right? So that was that was strange. It was strange, but deep down inside, I knew that my only priority, my first priority, was in that situation, of course, to do what I was told and follow orders, but not follow orders blindly, so that my soldiers would get killed for no reason, right? So it's and you can argue whether that is a bad or a good soldier, but that was my decision, right? So it was a strange time, but it was a good it was a hope for the culture of taking care of your soldiers, getting that grant. I think that was that's what it gave me.
Yeah. I was going to say, so after you'd done that, you obviously left the military, and what did you do sort of from then up until what you're doing now?
I went to Guatemala and started growing cacao for chocolate. That's what I did. My fourth war zone. So Guatemala is middle Central America. Well, you guys know, Belizeans is part of the empire, right? So Central America. I went there for a couple of years, and I started a cacao plantation, and now actually I export very, very fine grains of cacao back to Denmark. That won prizes. They won the prize of the on the international competition in Salon de Chocolat in Paris 2017. I won the prize of the best cacao in the world. The best grain of cacao, just like that was the world champion of cacao actually. So I did that for a few years, and then I returned actually to Denmark when my court case was done, and I went back to being the company commander for a couple of years, and then I left again, and now I actually sit in Panama and manage security for a big shipping company called Maersk, and I'm in charge of security for the Americas. So everything that comes in and out of our ports, every vessel that goes to and forth, and every inland services, everything that has to do with any outside threat against the company or our assets or our people, our customers or our cargo. That's my responsibility. So I guess I became a brigadier when it came to it, with a lot of people dependent on me.
Yeah. No, that it's quite interesting how your career's gone to like different sort of like occupation. Like it's obviously gone from being obviously in the military and then obviously doing your cacao plantations, going back obviously to finish off your court case, and then obviously doing this couple of years back into the military, and then obviously coming back and doing basically doing security for one of the biggest shipping companies in the world, and being in charge of
shipping company in the world.
Yes, okay. Doing ship obviously. So yeah, doing security for, or not even doing security. You are the security man for the whole of the biggest shipping company in the world, and being in charge of all, obviously, like you say, North and South America and Central America. That's quite an interesting route you've gone down. And obviously, as I say, like is sort of where you are now, is that your sort of long-term plan? Is that where you're planning to stay?
Do you have a long-term plan, Dan?
Not really. No, I don't have a depends what your class is long-term. Not really.
That's right. You just answered your question. That's
true.
the thing. I think when you have gone through what we have gone through, then fate or chance or timing will take you places and show you stuff. And being who we are, we doesn't matter if we work in a supermarket or a pet store or or being the senior security manager of Americas, of the largest shipping company in the world. It doesn't matter where it takes us. We just kick ass as good as we can, right?
Yeah.
We do the best job we can. We optimize. We find out that the dog food of that kind and that kind should not be right there. They should be and the manager will always see you as somebody who is right here and now doing optimizing the best he can, because we know that we cannot go through life blind or in a fog. We've seen too much, right? We picked up pieces of dead bodies, right? We need to get the most out of this time as we can, right? So when you ask me, shit, I don't know. I have a saying. I actually stole that from a stupid American movie, Starship Troopers. Yeah. He says at some point, he says, "So come on, you maggots, do you want to live forever?" Well, that's one thing. Oh, you apes, actually, I think it's a drill instructor. But they have a saying where they say, "I'm staying here for as long as they need me, or until they find someone better." Right? So I'm thinking I'm gonna do the best I can. If they find someone who can do it better, hire him, and I'm out. And if I do such a good job that you don't need me anymore, then I'm out, and I will probably find something else. And if my next job is working in a supermarket, then that is my next job, because it doesn't matter. One thing will lead to another, and another thing will lead to something else. All of a sudden, you find yourself in the craziest places in the world just because you chose to do it, right? So so I think whenever we believe that we are stuck, um, it's because we became lousy at looking around or looking up, or or just being more flexible, right? So it's you never know, you never know what what life brings
Yeah.
tomorrow and next month and a year. Maybe I'll be here for 12 years. Who knows? I
Who
don't know.
knows? Who knows? Well, I know one thing I'll be doing as soon as we can get around this, obviously all this COVID stuff. I'm gonna come. I'd like to come and visit you. That'd be great. I've always wanted to go to South America. I've never been. It's one place I've never been, and I'll make sure I try and come down at some point.
Yeah, Panama's great. You would love it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
It's tropical.
It's warm. It's a lot warmer than the UK anyway. But yeah,
I can imagine.
I definitely would do that. I definitely come and visit. And as I say, if we get the chance, hopefully in the next, well, whenever we get the opportunity from, post COVID, we can get together and have like a reunion for all the guys and girls that we all served with, and meet up in. We're probably going to meet up in Copenhagen or something like that, and have a good knees up as we call it. So yeah, that's definitely what we'll do. But yeah, it's been absolutely great. Like I say, chatting to you. Like we for some reason, like, I don't know what, but I think ever since we met, like it's always been positive. Sometimes, obviously, I know people are busy. I say people. I mean, we can be busy sometimes. Obviously, doing what you do, you're a busy man, and I know that. But it's always good to have a good chat, and I think that's something that I like to kind of put forward by doing this podcast is chatting, and I mean in general. Like, obviously, we're all going through. To put it bluntly, we're all going through a shit time, and just chatting to each other, chatting to your friends and family. Yeah, we might not be able to see them physically, like in the flesh, but we can see them on, video chat. We can see them or hear them on a call or something like that. And I feel like that's probably the best thing we can do at the moment. Obviously, not being able to see them. So yeah, that's something I feel, is quite important at the moment. And I feel, like I said, I do waffle sometimes, but I just like talking, and obviously meeting someone like yourself. It's been great to like meet. And again, I know one day, hopefully at some point this year, hopefully I'll be able to meet up, and I'll be able to actually shake your hand and say thanks for being the person you have been and the person that I met 10, 11 years ago. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and from my side, Dan, thank you for being. You have an enormous drive. You want to do this and you do it right, and I think that's a strength, because since the first technological problem we had doing this, it might have just run out into the sand, and it would never have been anything. So I'm glad that you're so persistent in actually getting it done. I think that's going to be, and it is, if you don't know it, that is one of your strengths as a person, right? So take that, and also this chat. You're absolutely right. We especially need to just relax, sit down, have an hour's talk or an hour and a half about subjects, things. Sometimes they go one way or the other way, and you have a good talk about things, and it's rarely in this busy world that we live in, COVID or not, that we do this. I think so. So thank you very much. Also, this is good for me. It's it's soothing for the soul to talk to someone who was there, um, with me all the way, and it's I think it's always good for us veterans talk things over. We always get an interesting new perspective. And now that 10, 11 years went by, sometimes you can even see it with a bit of humor. And I learned one thing from you during my deployment is that if you don't have any humor, you shouldn't have joined the infantry. I believe you said that at some point, and you're absolutely right. That's how it is. And so thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. Absolute pleasure. As I say, I'll make sure that people, you know, when the book is out and when it, obviously, like you say, when it's been translated into English, I'll definitely put it out there. It's going to be a great read. I know it is. I've seen obviously reviews of it, obviously English reviews, and like I said, once it's translated, I'll definitely put it out there and make sure that people can buy the book. You know, people that I've worked with and people that were there at the time, so they'll be able to sort of look back and see exactly and have sort of memories to look back on, and realize exactly what they've achieved. Because I think it's quite important to realize what we've done isn't normal. Like, it isn't normal. Like, people think like going around, you know, people, like I said, again, I don't want to keep mentioning it, but people look at films and playing on Call of Duty. That's just life. It's not just me. It's a very different reality. Don't get me wrong. I've not done to the extremes of what some people have done, you know, but I know, going off, you know, what we did in Afghanistan, then it's definitely not all what you see. And it's not all. What's the saying in Rocky when he says it's not all sunshine and rainbows? Because it isn't. It's a dark place if it, you know, if you let it get you like that. So as I say, mate, I appreciate it. It's been a great chatting to you, and hopefully we get the chance to meet up in the near future. We'll see when that near future is, but what's for people who want to sort of keep an eye on yourself, because I know you do some interesting things. Do you use social media quite a bit, or are you not? What's the best place to sort of try and find out about you?
So I'm trying. I'm having like this personal doubt around social media, especially because I feel that I've got it pretty much figured out, because we are from where we are. But when I see Latin American Panamanians, they're sucked into the cell phone constantly. They will walk into things. They will run with the cell phone like this, looking at stuff. They they will guard other people's children and other people's dogs while looking at their phone, and security guards looking at everybody's just looking down into this apparatus that presents them with things that they should be experienced for themselves. I think that it's a substitute, it's a surrogate of something, of some dreams that are never realized and never lived out and all that. So yeah, I am on social media, absolutely. Facebook, Instagram, and under my name Eskil Berger. So if anyone wants to follow and look in and say hi and are interested in our stories and our adventures, there's also a Crazy Coy social media, both Instagram and Facebook, that I have been very poorly at putting things up, but when we sort of get the English version out, I'm going to promote that much more, because we have tons of photos and tons of stories and tons of situations that were not told in the book, and that's where people like you, Dan, can come in and actually be creative as well, right, and give your side of the story from when you were sitting there receiving information, and maybe your side of the story from what happened when we were shot at out in the. That could be really interesting. Like, and then all of a sudden you would have not only a 300 pages book, but a never-ending story of stories that would actually be interesting for people to read or listen to, right? All of a sudden it becomes something much bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely, like I said, I'd be definitely up for that. And like I said, it's something I can't wait for to do and tell my story eventually when, you know, we're able to, and obviously once everything's settled down. But as I say, mate, I appreciate it. I really appreciate everything. What I'll do is I'll put everything in the description. I'll make sure that everyone knows about it when it comes available. I'll put it into my social media. They'll be all linked in the description. So thanks very much for taking the time to watching this podcast. Hopefully you can take something from it, take some words of advice, or just listening to the stories that we have. And like I said, if I don't catch you soon, then I'll catch you on the flip side.